Hello and welcome back to Carping It Real. Today you join me down at my favourite venue, the lovely, stunning Ashmead down in Somerset. As far as conditions go, this is the worst carp fishing conditions. It's midwinter and the lake's actually froze solid, so I haven't even got the rods out. So yeah, on a mate's advice, Crowy's advice, he said to me whilst I was lucky to be filming his episode, and he said with starting the new channel you should try and do a video about your own fishing, and I put it off well, probably about a year now actually. So yeah, as the title suggests, this is kind of my tales of Ashmead, a place that I hold very dear, and yeah, somewhere that was always a dream to get on, and now I still feel very lucky to be a part of it down here. And yeah, my story about Ashmead would have to go back to about 10 years ago, when I used to fish on the little ponds next door as a young teenager, getting dropped off by my dad, and fishing with friends who were helping getting me into fishing, and I was just obsessed. Like, I used to, some of the best days, some of my happiest days being fishing over there, and it was all new and it was all exciting, and yeah, as I say, some of the very best days of my life. And I used to, on like summer evenings, I used to get the bottom rods out after stalking all day, and then I'd often just slip into daydreams peering through the fence of Ashmead, and obviously hearing about the place and looking online at all the pictures of the great fish in here, and I used to imagine what it would look like, and yeah, it was always just a dream. And unfortunately a dream it remained for probably close to a decade, and yeah, I always used to sit there, and obviously I knew of single scale, the absolute giant. It got up to like 58 pound at one point, and I used to almost, I guess it was like, yeah, daydreams, like imagining it. It was like I used to go right in depth with the daydreams about catching single scale and all of the other fish and how weedy it looked, and yeah, it was just magical. It really was. It just looked magical. But as I say, unfortunately for me, a dream it remained for yeah, about 10 years. And then yeah, so if I bring you up to date, fast forward to that time, shortly after having our first child, I thought, I need to get out and go fishing. So I went to a local farm pond just to do a couple of nights. There's obviously a big life change as a young lad having our first child. So I went down, and it would have been like back end of summer, early autumn. Went down there, and on this trip I was just on my own, and yeah, I'd say actually the direction of my whole fishing life changed from that evening, really, when I was lucky enough to meet Kev Parr, who I'm now very lucky to call a friend. Yeah, just one of the nicest people I've ever met, and I give him quite a good name, which is the BFG. So if you're watching, Kev, thank you, and hope you're well. And yeah, as I was cooking my tea in the evening, I got the rods out and I started cooking up like a chicken curry or something chicken, and Kev said, "Oh, that smells nice." And anyway, we got chatting, and yeah, he was fishing for perch, and yeah, we got chatting. We was getting on really well, and I said, "Oh, my ultimate dream's like this place called Ashmead. It's over in Somerset," and he said, "I might be able to help you with that." And like my ears pricked up, and he said, "Yeah, I'm like really good friends with the owner, Mark Wilsinger." So yeah, fast forward, we parted ways, and he was kind enough to send Mark an email, and yeah, the next thing I knew, I was basically getting a chance at Ashmead. And I remember it was a day a little bit similar to this. It was it was a winter's day. That's really the only similarity. It was a really boggy and, I mean, actually good fishing conditions. It was mild and yeah, a bit rainy, but came down here, and that was the first day that I ever got to walk around the place, which was just mind-blowing. And Skeff walked me around, and yeah, if it weren't for being with him, I would have got lost. And then my first trip came that summer, because I remember saying, like, not to be too picky, but if I could get a chance here, I'd love to have a go in the summer. Obviously for my love of floater fishing, I finally got that chance, and it was the 21st of June. And yeah, I'd done 3 nights, and I remember coming through like the gates and just thinking, like, this is actually happening. It really was like amazing and magical. I was thinking, you know, the people that have fished here, and the likes of Terry Hearn and Mickey Gray, Chris Yates, Tim Paisley, Ian Chilcott, like, it's just incredible. And Ashmead is so unique, like there is nowhere like it, and the fish were so special. Yeah, Skeff put me onto a good, likely looking area, and as I say, I'd done 3 nights for my first session, and it was the most magical session. Obviously, with the experience I've got now, I'd have fished it very different. I was really, it was like a stalking session. I was too scared almost to lift my rods out and go off stalking, which is, you know, much more the way that I do it now. But I thought, crikey, you know, I really want to catch one. I need to catch one, because I didn't know when my next chance was going to be. I remember it was the 3rd evening, and I got an absolutely screaming mental take when I ran down to the rod, and I can remember, it's just like it's printed into my mind, where my reel was just turning slowly and the bite line was going crazy. I was just fishing in a little hole in the weed on a little clay spot, and yeah, as I've got down to the rod, I remember the reel turning, and as I picked up into the rod, it was just like an on-off take, and yeah, 0 to 0. I can't really explain how gutted I was. I was in a bit of a bad way. And then in the morning, I remember getting up and I thought, I'll have a slow pack down. Nothing was happening. And then as I went back down the bank and checked my spot again, when I say it was like a jacuzzi, it was like the size of this bait boat, if not bigger. And there must have been a couple of fish down there. It really, really was like jacuzzi, and I'd never seen bubbling like it. Exactly on my spot, exactly where I'd lost a fish the night before, and I was like counting down the clock, and yeah, in the end I was praying and all sorts, but yeah, unfortunately it didn't go. And back then on the old booking system, you arrived at midday 12, and then you had to be off at 12. And in hindsight, if I'd have said to Skeff like what was happening, I'm pretty sure he'd have given me an extra like half an hour or something, and I might have had one, but I painfully had to reel in off fizzers. And I remember as I reeled in off the fizzers, it just, by the time I like put the rod on the barrow with like 5 minutes to spare, I looked back and it was like it had all stopped. Oh, Robin's just landed on the camera. Hope it's not wobbling too much. But yeah, so that was the first session, and I always remember as I was leaving, and I said to Skeff, like, thank you so much, like, I'm so grateful. And he said, well, there'll be another time, Jake. And I remember driving home like thinking, thank God, like there will be another time. I don't need to worry, I don't need to panic, like I will get another chance one day. And yeah, that chance came on a cancellation. It was a 5-night cancellation, and that was at the very, very back end of that year's booking system, or ticket if you like, before the winter syndicate started. And yeah, not loads to talk about really, because it was a 5-night blank in Gallops, and again, inexperienced, trying to be stalky, you know, scared to move along the bank because I thought that they'd be really, really you know, sensitive fish, with it being shallow. And so yeah, basically just fished it wrong. Set up on the fish that Skeff had basically helped me out. He put me in there, saw a big common in there, so that's why he said about going into the Gallops. And yeah, after the first 2 or 3 days, despite getting the rods out, they were still there, but then they melted away. And then that second half of the trip, obviously, again, different experience. I now know I should have been on my toes, but yeah, so that was a 5-night blank. And then my next trip would have been the following spring. So I'd done 2 trips. I'd done one in the March, and then a 3-night trip, and then I'd done like a bit of a birthday present to myself. I'd done 2 nights in April. And yeah, the March trip was to be one of the most memorable, because that's where I had another painful loss, but I did manage my first carp. So I think it was on the second afternoon, something that I can't normally do at fishing. I was that tired from the excitement and staying up late that I did actually try and go for a nap. And I always remember it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I think I was dozing off. I can't remember if I was actually asleep, but I woke up to I think it was quite a decent run, and when I got down to it, picked up the rod. To be fair, it was quite an uneventful battle, and it was a 20-pound common in the net, my first Ashmead carp, and in a way, for what special giant fish that were in here, it was actually quite a nice way to start on quite a modest sized carp. So yeah, that one meant the absolute world. Obviously, first carp from here, and yeah, stunning 20-pound common. And then it was the second day. Again, same sort of time, same spot as well. I got another take, and it was a really, really twitchy take, like a tench bite. And as I've ran down to the rod, there was just like a gentle bend in the rod, and the line was just up tight to the weed. And as I picked up into it, it was just left. It was still in the hole of the weed, but where my rig was, it was like up tight to the left-hand bank of the weed. And as it was on, it was just like bang, 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 and then come off. And I was absolutely sick. And yeah, I mean, with any experience in carp fishing, the really old, clever fish, that is what they do. I don't know how big it was, but I would say that it was a clever older carp with my experience. And yeah, it did sound awfully similar to one of the real special ones in it, but obviously I'll never know. And yeah, as I say, I was really sick for that. And then yeah, that was the end of that session. I couldn't help but be on a high with my first carp, but the way that the fish came off, it was quite a painful loss. And then, as I say, I was really lucky because I was back here the following month in April, and I went into a swim called the Throne, which is a really, really stunning, comfortable, lovely peg. I had another 2 carp, again 2 20-pound commons, first ever boat battle back then, and I have to have a shout out to a guy, I think his name was Charlie from Essex, and I felt terrible because it was prime bite time. I woke up to a screaming take, and he was fishing on one of the islands called Maxwell's, and he had a boat at his swim, and this fish was genuinely like jammed solid, and there was nothing I could have done. So I had to shout and wake him up, which I felt awful about, but thankfully he came to my rescue, boated across, I hopped in with a net, and when we got out over the spot, it was genuinely like, there was no way I could have ever got it out of that weed. It was all fresh spring weed, and it was completely solid, and the fish was actually led on its side just below the surface, so I could just see this lovely, perfect golden common. And yeah, we had to awkwardly get it into the net. It was a bit of an awkward netting, and yeah, my second carp, and as I say, meant the world. And what I always say about Ashmead is, when you get a carp on here, no matter how much disturbance you've made, carp could be, I mean, the weed acts as a buffer anyway, but the nature of Ashmead, it's so broken up that if they're around the other side of an island, they don't know what's going on. So, you know, you don't always have to be as quiet as what I first thought. And then, yeah, it was the following morning, so that bite came at first light, and my second bite came a little bit earlier than that. It was just before first light, again, screaming bolt and take off the same spot, but this time I managed to bring it in through the weed, and landed it just from the bank. Little Robin, hello buddy. And yeah, this time managed to land it from the bank, completely different shape, bit more dumpy, and yeah, another 20-pound Ashmead common. Just an absolute dream session. It was beautiful weather. I remember like cooking up some really nice food, and it was just a really, really lovely session. I think that was it for that year. So that was kind of my second year, and for whatever reason I couldn't get back. And then yeah, I remember it was autumn time, and I went onto Facebook, as you do, and to my absolute shock and horror, I saw a post from Skeff, and yeah, it just said that he was leaving Ashmead. The way I kind of explain it is, it was like I'd won my carp fishing lottery ticket, and it was like I got to use it for a little while, and then someone had ripped it up. And then yeah, luckily, the famous Carp Society, they decided to buy the lake. Skeff sold it to them, and yeah, that was where really my journey on Ashmead was going to take an even better start. Come on, buddy. I need some biscuits for you, don't I? Yeah, so as I say, Skeff decided to sell Ashmead, and thankfully the Carp Society bought it. So it's been a Carp Society water now for I think about 3 years, something like that. And then I got the email of my dreams. Oh, there's a little robin on my foot. Oh, yeah. So I got the email of my dreams basically when the Carp Society were offering me a winter syndicate ticket, which was it's just the ultimate buzz, really. With being reasonably local to Ashmead, I thought now I can really sort of build a bit of a picture rather than only having 2, 3 or 5 days on the booking system. I could really now, despite being winter, I could put a lot of time in. I could do some pre-baiting. So yeah, it was, as I say, the ultimate buzz. And yeah, for that first winter, obviously I was here for opening day, the anticipation, I was prepped again. It was such a buzz. And yeah, I was really lucky because I think it was on a moon. I think it was on a full moon. But what I can remember is it was absolutely foul weather, which, as a lot of you will know, is, you know, the best winter fishing conditions. It was really warm. I think it was 13 degrees, low pressure, loads of wind, really strong winds, and rain. And I opted for a swim on Wilson's, where I landed my first 20-pounder and obviously had that painful loss. And yeah, I can remember getting up there onto my own island, back on Wilson's, and I just had such a buzz, and done my usual thing, give Skeff a call. Skeff, can you help me out? And thankfully he did. He always helped me out, and he let me know of a little spot off the back of the island, a little clay run, and I was careful to just pepper my loose feed and some naturals all along the clay run. Settled in for the first night, cooked up some tea, and then the wind was getting stronger and stronger, to the point where I think it was about 3 o'clock in the morning I was still awake, because the trees, you know, the wind was that loud that I actually couldn't sleep. And I was tucked up in the bivvy with my dog, drinking tea, a couple of candles on, and yeah, no sooner as I dropped off, I got a twitchy take. Looked on the receiver, and it was the rod just in behind my bivvy, just down in behind the tree, and yeah, I was away. Sprinted down round the bivvy, slid down through the clay, picked up the rod, and I just picked up into just a weight that was just sort of plodding, and it was just off the end of the rod tip where the rig was, and it was basically ready for the net straight away. And then as I got the net into position, it did kite down. I say it kited, it just pulled to the left a little bit, very, very uneventful. And within a matter of seconds, really, I scooped it up in the net, put the head torch on, and there was just, especially at that time, it was the fish of my lifetime, a fish known as Patch. And yeah, just, I can't even put into words how like special that fish was for me. Obviously, one of the A team, one of the fish that I'd been looking at for years and years. You know, some of the most famous carp anglers in the country had landed that carp, and just a stunning 31 pound, I think it was 31, maybe 31 and a half, of just pristine, fully scaled, perfect mirror carp. And yeah, put it in the sling, and my friend Mike, he was fishing on it at the time, so I got him to come up at the first light, and as we just undone the sling, it was amazing. It was like opening a Christmas present as a kid, and Mike done me proud with some really, really nice photos, and yeah, just releasing that fish, and it was just like an absolute buzz. And that was the first night of my winter syndicate. And I mean, not that it's good to be like a secret squirrel, but I probably made a little bit of a naive mistake where, you know, I straight away put it out there that I'd caught this fish of a lifetime, you know, as you would, I suppose. But Wilson's was then pretty busy. I mean, it was quite a fished spot anyway, but I certainly didn't help things. But you know, Ashmead's there for everyone to enjoy. We're all lucky syndicate members. And then I remember one of the next trips, I came down, and obviously having that success off of Wilson's, I certainly wanted to get back down onto Wilson's Island again. And I can't remember the times, but again, I remember the weather conditions. It was very, very similar to that first successful trip. Really stormy, strong winds, really mild. And I can actually remember that trip I'd done a third night, so I got lucky that trip. I had 2 fish. So the first night was 990s, as I say, really mild, perfect winter conditions, and I had a small mirror, which if I'd have lost, like, I'm not just saying it, like, that fish went crazy, and it was really, really pulling down my left hand margin, trying to get out round the corner. And yeah, if I'd have lost that, I would have been saying that would have probably been a better fish. But it was only like 10, 12 pound. And then rinse and repeat the next night. That same spot has done the business again. It was like, I would have hoped it was quite an unlikely fishing spot for people. I don't know that, but it was. I think it could have been. But yeah, rinse and repeat. And then the second night, I've had another fish. This time, a small common. So now I've had 3 fish on my winter syndicate in 4 nights fishing, I think. And as a bit of a beginner on here, you know, that was, you know, I was really, really happy with that. And then on the third night, I was due to go home, but the conditions were to get, to my mind, even better, where they dropped from 990 to 980, and on this third night they were dropping down to 970. And the foul weather had held up. You know, it was still really, really windy, southwesterlies, really mild, and a crashing low pressure. Again, rinse and repeat, really stalky tactics of just sitting back really, really quiet with the dog, tucked up in the bivvy. And yeah, when I woke up on that third morning, I was a bit gutted to realise that I hadn't had that take that I really believed I was going to get. And yeah, that was the end of that. And then I can remember looking back that Wilson's Island was starting to get a bit hammered, and I thought, you know, maybe it's time to look somewhere else. And I remember we had a big freeze up, just like the conditions today. The place froze over solid at I think it was the first or the second week of December. So obviously, you know, no one was bothering with it. It was all frozen over. And I remember going to visit family, and a really, really mild storm had pushed through. And I thought, you know, with having such a cold snap and it coming in so cold, now was the time to have a go in Tom's Pond. It's the deepest, oldest part of the lake, and I thought them big old special ones, you know, there's every reason to believe that after that cold snap and a you know, a lid on the place, that there would be every reason for them to be in that deeper, older part of the lake. So yeah, again, made the phone call. Skeff, can you help me out? And he gave me a few pointers. And yeah, I remember when I was visiting family at Christmas, and I was looking at the weather, and I was thinking, I've just got to go. When that buzz comes over you, and you really feel that it's right. And I'd been going down. I was doing like probably hour round trips, and I was putting in, like, when I say a handful, I mean like a palm full of bait on my little clay spot. Really, really precise angling just off the rod top. And yeah, it all came good when I done a session. I think it was over New Year's actually. And when I got there, I was praying that the Tom's Pond swim was going to be empty, and thankfully it was. So without even looking around, I've gone straight in there. And as I've gone in there, it was like I was stalking midsummer for carp that were feeding in the edge. I didn't know they were in there, but I just really felt like they were in there. So rather than barrowing round all through the mud, I actually carried my gear round bit by bit in the light drizzle of the afternoon. And I remember as I got round to my spot, just seeing loads and loads of like old frothy bubbles, and I just thought that looks so good. Like I really, really think they've been on my spot. And again, I think it was a full moon. I'm pretty sure it was a full moon, but what I definitely can remember is, again, I can remember the conditions were really stormy, really mild, temperatures above 10 degrees, and after that freeze up with really strong winds, it was to my mind game on. And again, the wind, I was kipping under the willow, tucked up in the bivvy. Spot was just down around the corner, and yeah, being sat under that willow and all the really, really high trees around Tom's, there was just no way that I could get off to sleep. It was so loud. And in and amongst all of that loud wind, I think it was about early hours of the morning, 2-3 in the morning, I was still up, and I heard a giant carp. And I mean, I'm like it would have been all in probably 15 yards away from where I was bivvied. And it was just one show, one decent, really positive show, and it sounded absolutely massive. And I remember then I actually got up out of bed, because I was trying to sleep in bed, and I got up out of bed and I sat there and I made a cup of tea, and I just felt so confident. And that buzz was just, that was like proper winter big carp fishing buzz. I can remember it now. I was so excited. And then that was it. Obviously I couldn't sleep. And then after another good hour or so, and nothing had happened, it had all gone quiet. And then, yeah, at some point I've drifted off. And then just before first light, I've got another twitchy take. So I've bolted up, ran round the corner, slid down the bank, no shoes on, picked up the rod. And again, just like Patch, it was sat on the spot. Just sat on the spot, shaking its head. It just felt like just a really heavy... I mean, it's literally under my feet, so you can imagine how heavy it felt. I remember, because I only had one net, because it was really busy, I was like, you know, where's my net? And I'd left it in my bivvy. And before I went to bed, I was actually just going to slide it into the clay. And then if I got a take, I would have almost ran into it, and I'd have remembered to grab the net. And obviously I forgot in the buzz of getting a take when you just woken up. I remember this fish is just near enough ready for the net straight away, like you often find with these Ashmead carp. And then it started going down to my left hand margin, and I was like thinking, this is feeling really, really heavy. And I flicked my back wind on, because I had to give it a bit of line, and I thought, now my legs are absolutely shaking. I'm thinking, what the hell is this? And I brought it back in front of me, and again it's pretty much ready for the net, and I had to give it like a bit more tension than what I was, to try and wake it up a bit more, hoping that it would go away from me as if it was going to go out of Tom's. And yeah, thankfully it did that, and I put my back wind back on, and loosened off the clutch, and I had to put my rod on the floor at an angle over all the brambles. It was chaos. And I remember with my head torch, I could still see my reel was still ticking away slowly, and that there was a bend in my rod just nodding like that. So I knew it was still on. And I've slid up, ran round, just 5 yards or something, grabbed the net, ran back round, chucked it out in the water. It's got caught on the hedge, on all the brambles. And now I'm like panicking. I've picked back up in the rod, and it was like, it hadn't even gone to the other side of Tom's, but it was now out in the middle of Tom's, which isn't very big anyway. But yeah, I've managed to then play it in, and again it's kited down the margin, and as it was pulling away, I've had to give it back wind, and I'm thinking, this is bigger than anything I've ever felt before. And then whilst I'm like whacking away and trying to unnet the net, and I've thrown it out in front of me, and then with the head torch on, I've looked up and I could see where the line was going. It was coming down right in front of me, and then there it was, the common. I've just scooped it up. And as it was coming in, its head was by like the spreader block, and then its tail's gone in. I'm thinking, that's got to be the long common. And I've looked down, and with the head torch, to just an immaculate giant common. And to this day, well, I mean, just by far the best winter capture, and my new fish of a lifetime, if you like. And yeah, there it was, the long common, no doubt. Normally a 40 pounder, and I'm thinking it's midwinter, it's definitely going to be a 40. And yeah, sacked it up for probably like half an hour, and yeah, got it out, weighed it, and it was 39.8, which was a new PB at the time. And I ran round, got Gatwick, Mick, a lovely old guy, he come round and helped out, had a cup of tea just to settle the nerves. And yeah, just enjoyed my couple of moments with it. I actually put the waders on, put Mike's waders on, got in the water, and yeah, released it. And again, just the ultimate buzz, and what this place can basically give you. But you can achieve your dreams on somewhere like this. So that was the winter. I think I had another couple of trips. Actually, yeah, I did. I had a pretty notable trip. A bit gutting really, but I always wonder what that trip could have brung. So again, a little bit of naive inexperience, another fish of a lifetime. I've put it all around. There's a robin. I've put it all around on social media and stuff, and then toms have started getting fished a little bit more. Again, you know, it's, as I said before, it's there for everybody to enjoy. And yeah, but anyway, I've got back down there. Usual thing. I've started doing some hour trip bait ups. That's easy for me to say. And yeah, I was coming down, palm full of bait, and I had one spot going in toms and then one in another old part of the lake, Craggy Island, which is one of the, well, definitely one of the lighter fished areas of Ashmead. And again, just off the reeds, found a lovely clay run, probably about 4 foot deep, nice and solid clay. You know, there's no weed, so that was a definite spot. And all the while that I was focusing on toms, I'd never had anything off that spot. And then I remember I got down there, and I think again it was a moon, pretty sure, but the weather again was bang on, super stormy. And I came down the night before, hoping that no one was in toms. I remember I came down and I put my palm full of bait out in toms, and as I've put it out on the long common spot just off the reeds, I have spooked whatever fish it was, and it moved a colossal amount of water. And to this day I always wonder, like, could it have been single? Obviously I'll never know. It could have just been a massive pike or something, but you know, either way it moved a lot of water, and it was like the buzz was an absolute joke. And I went round into Craggy, put my bait out on that spot, and then went home. And I didn't know at the time, but what I now know is one of the other anglers, he'd come in for an overnighter and just gone into toms, which, you know, it's foul weather, potentially off the back of my capture. You know, it's obvious that there's fish in there, you know, fair play. But so anyway, fast forward into the next day, I've got down after work, and as I was coming down the track, I was actually like, I was almost in a bad way. I seriously hope there's nobody in toms, because I have to get in there. Like, they're on that spot again. I've spooked something. Like, to my mind, I thought it was a carp. And yeah, got down there and there was no one in there. So like the buzz was like amazing, and I just thought, right, I need to get all my gear around there again, stalking my way around there with all my kit. And I set up even further away this time, up on the more normal spot for where guys bivvy up when they fish in toms. So like my spots are now like one in toms and one in Craggy, and it's sort of like an equal distance between each spot. And then that night the weather's come in, foul weather, couldn't sleep, and this time the take came at about 11. And you imagine what I've seen the day before. I've had the long common off of it a few weeks, a month before, probably a few weeks. I've then spooked a fish off of my spot. So when I got a twitchy take, I am, you know, there's only one spot that's in my mind. There's only one rod that's in my mind. And, you know, I'm not a small chap. I'm, you know, quite a heavy guy. And obviously with Ashmead, you're trying to be stalky all the time. And in the clay, I've got this twitchy take at about 11 o'clock, and I've just bolted the full length of toms around the corner onto my little tucked away spot, and I'm slipping and sliding. So if any fish were in toms, you know, they would have been gone anyway. And as I've got down to the rod, normally you'd see the light coming through the brambles, especially at 11 o'clock at night on a winter's night. You know, it would light up all the bushes. And as I've got down there, I'm thinking, there's no light. Like, what the hell's going on? Like, so I've just lifted my rig out, and it was in the exact same place. And I thought, what the hell's going on? Like, I definitely had a take. And then it's just dawned on me. It was like, maybe it's my other rod. So then I've sprinted the full length of toms again, back up to my bivvy, round the corner. My Delkim, the light had just gone off. So I thought, oh my God, it's been that other rod. And as I've got down there, it's all stopped. It's like, bobbin was all completely moved. And then, yeah, as I've lifted up into it, rather than lifting up there, it's lifted up here, and I've lifted it out. And I was using my favourite blowback rig, and yeah, tubing was all blown round, and obviously I'd missed a chance. Again, another twitchy take, not a very heavily fished part of the lake. You know, again, I'll never know what it was, but yeah, I was proper gutted, because not only had I missed the take, which was the most important thing, I'd now buggered toms, and I knew it as well. I did do the second night, but nothing came along, and I just thought, sprinting up and down there at that time of night, if they were in there, they would have definitely been gone. So yeah, that was kind of like the end of that winter. Still a massive buzz. Two fish of a lifetime. First winter, 4 fish. I was absolutely made up with that. And yeah, without going into every single session and every single capture, I thought the next thing I want to talk about really is probably the best session of my whole life, which was the following year, I think. Again, terrible at times, but it was some point, you know, well after that winter, and going through, you know, personally the worst time of my life. Absolutely the worst period of my life. I couldn't actually go fishing for, you know, like I say, for personal reasons, but the next time I did go, I thought I'm going to treat myself to a summer trip. So I booked up 3 or 5 nights, I can't remember, and it was midsummer, baking hot, and as luck would have it, I got down here and there was only 4 anglers. I was one of 4 out of a potential 8, and I knew I had the whole place for, I'm pretty sure it was 3 days, and I remember finding a lot of the carp out in the front of toms. They weren't actually in toms, but they were out the front, and I thought, I've always fancied toms. Probably stems back to when I was a little boy, well, a young lad fishing over the fence, peering through, and it was always summertime back then. And I've always had the idea of going in toms and absolutely stoving a load of bait in. So in the preparations to that trip, I've made up a really good mix, loads of liquids, loads of naturals, and a really good quality boilie, loads of chops, you know, a proper good mix. So yeah, when I opted for toms, and I thought I can use toms as my, what I call my base camp, and then I've got the whole rest of Ashmead from morning till night to do my favourite, my love of carp fishing, which is floater fishing, especially up close floater fishing. And yeah, as I say, it was just the trip of my dreams. But yeah, anyway, so I've opted for toms. Luckily, obviously, one of 4 in a draw, so luckily I managed to get in there. So I've gone round, set up my base camp, got everything all nice and neat and level and all tidy, because I thought there's nowhere I'm moving, this is where I'm staying, and I'm going to stove the bait in. So I've put, I don't know how much bait it was at least 5 kilo on this big clay spot, and then I've put all the loose stuff in the weed, all around the little clear runs, the little clay channels as well, all leading into the spot. And then I've gone off stalking. So I've brought loads of bread, a couple of big bags of dog biscuits. There was nowhere I wanted to run out. And despite it wasn't actually a good summer weather that year for us in England. It was a bit of a crappy summer, really. As luck would have it, especially after the year I'd had, yeah, it was probably, you know, a little bit meant to be or whatever, because we had 3 days. It was like the 3 days I was there. It was just glorious heat and sunshine, shorts and t-shirt weather. And one of the other guys that was on was somebody I can hopefully call a friend, which is the legend that's Bill Phillips. And again, super lucky. He was my first ever podcast, which I'll be forever grateful for. And if you're watching, Bill, hopefully we'll do episode 2 one day. And yeah, he was here, and he was here with his friend, Bob, I think his name was. And I'm like doing my usual thing, like lapping, and then one of the other times I've come round for another lap trying to hunt down the carp, and this time Bill would obviously pop round to see his mate. And Bob said to Bill, he said, crikey, he said, this young lad, he don't stop. He's like lapping. And Bill paid me a compliment that I haven't forgotten. I don't think I ever will. And he said, oh, don't worry about our young Jake. He can catch him. And that, like, you know, that meant quite a lot coming from Bill. And yeah, so as you can tell, I've set up my base camp, and, you know, the bulk of the trip is about my ultimate dream of catching one off the surface. And everything looked perfect. Everything looked absolutely perfect. And I can remember the carp that were out the front of Tom's, they looked really, really up for a floater, but I resisted, and I thought, no, I'm not going to, because there's every chance I'll get a chance on my bottom rods. So I thought, no, I'm going to leave them to it, and it was choked with big carp. One in particular had its shoulders right up out the water, and in hindsight was probably a carp, either JC, but most probably petals. Really good common. But anyway, as I said, I've left them all to it. And as I'm lapping on that first day, I've gone up into one of my favourite swims, not somewhere I've ever fished much, and I've only caught this one carp from there, but it's No Carp Corner. Probably the most left alone part of the lake. Yeah, I just had a good feeling. And anyway, lapping, I've found this common up there, and this was to be my ultimate dream achieved, where I caught my first carp off the surface, and yeah, it was a carp called Gray's. After Mickey Gray fishing on it, I believe that Skeff allowed him to name a small 20-pound common, which has now gone on to be like a mid-30, I think it was 33.12. But yeah, I've gone round there, and it was sat in the weed, moving around, looked really, really happy, really, really natural. And I've crept into position, and I thought the best idea probably is to just get a bit of bread out. Only like, I don't know, probably 10 yards out. And I've put these couple of bits of bread out with not much hesitation. It's come straight up and just slurped at this bit of bread, and I've just watched the bread disappear, and I thought, I have finally seen what I always believed I would see one day, and that is one of these special carp from Ashmead taking a surface bait. So then frantically I'm like getting a decent sized bit of bread on my hook, and then it's come up and taken another bit. So then before just plopping out, I thought, right, I'll get another one or two bits out, I can't remember. And as it disappeared down in the weed and it was sending up bubbles, I've then quickly got it into position where it was feeding, again like 10 yards if that, and I'm sat down, crept down, and then it's come up to my bit of bread, and it's like sucked at it really hard, and then I couldn't tell whether he'd had my bread. At this point I didn't think he had, so I just thought that I'll just correct the line. So as I'm correcting the line, waiting to see my bit of bread move, I've just felt some tension, and the fish was in underneath me, and I've just seen this gold common, and it's just flanked up out the edge, and it's on, and it's like underneath my feet, and it's just kited, and it's just going zzz, all the way up, trying to get to like the snaggy overhangs, and I'm like hanging on for dear life. And yeah, after a really, really good battle, to be fair, the best battle to that date that I'd had from a carp from Ashmead, and yeah, got it in the net, and I was like, oh my god, I've re-caught the long common. It's a 40-pounder, like I can't believe it. And I got it out and I weighed it on my Reuben Heatons. It was 33.12, and I thought, these scales, I must have dropped them or something, they're buggered. So I went up to one of the other anglers, I think he was up in Square Bay, got his set of Reuben Heatons, which were the same as mine, again 33.12. It can't be the long common. It didn't look underweight, it looked a good size. But yeah, it was, I later learned it was a fish called Gray's, which, had it have not been caught by Mickey Gray and he had named it, then it would have definitely been known as the baby long common, because it is just so similar, especially when it's in the net and when you're holding it. So yeah, I got Amy and the kids to come down, so we've got some really nice family photos of that. Again, obviously only being local, that they quickly got down and we had some lovely photos, and then went to bed that night, cooked up a steak, had a couple of cold ciders, and just watched the most incredible summer's evening draw in. I woke up, walked down to my rods. I wanted to reel in as quick as I could. If I didn't get anything through the night, I wanted to be up on my toes and getting around Ashmead, trying to achieve my dream of catching as many as I could off the top. So yeah, as I've gone down to lift my rig out of Tom's, I've just seen this common. It's such a weird scenario, but I've seen this common just like lift sort of that slowly up towards the top of the surface, up out of the weed, amongst loads of bubbling. I thought, oh, that looks a good common. That's probably like a mid 20 or 30 pound common. And I just lifted my rig out and crept away and got back to the bivvy and just left it there, got my floater rod, and then crept back past it, and it was still dipping down, coming up really slowly, so it was feeding, almost in like slow motion. But yeah, again, I've just left it, gone off stalking. And that day, if I said that catching greys was my ultimate dream, catching one off the rod tip, off the reeds, was my actual ultimate dream. So yeah, I've gone off stalking and I've put some dog biscuits in. And I remember the only bad thing about that trip that I had was the bird life was just anything that I was trying to set up, go for a lap and come back to see if they were feeding. The birds were just ruining every single chance, no matter where I went on the lake. It was just, the bird life was quite bad that trip. So once I found the fish up in the weed or cruising about happily, I'd have to just have a go for them and then get a chance, either catch one, get lucky or not, and then move on. So I found like a decent group of fish, and I've put some dog biscuits in. I'm just cruising up and down the margin, seeing if there's anything else about. And as I've come in, I can just see some water ebbing out from the margin off the reeds where I've put the dog biscuit off. By now I'm starting to get a bit annoyed by the bird life, as you do, and I've crept over, and it wasn't the birds. It was an old, crusty Ashmead. Had to have been, like, I don't know, an original or something. Yeah, as I've seen it, I've wanted to get back out of the way. But then I looked back in again, had just like a dead eye, a blind eye. So I've quickly grabbed my rod, and as soon, it's just still feeding, it's munching these dog biscuits off the reeds, like that far off the bank. My ultimate dream. And yeah, I mean, I was so lucky. The way that it all happened, like the way that it was feeding, the blind eyed to me, and I've just lowered the dog biscuit, like literally on its nose, off the rod tip, and yeah, it's just come up, slurped it, bang, hooked it. Mental battle, not a very long battle, but it did go like crazy. And I remember there was that many carp out a bit further in the weed that I didn't want to disturb them, so I was trying to get it in, got it in, and then rested it in some water, like in decoy, which was just round the corner. And then a really lovely guy, Dylan, he come and helped me do the photos, and it was just, again, a magical moment with such an old carp and one of the old mirrors, a low 20, I think it was like 22 pounds, something like that, and a fish known as Turbo. And just such a special, memorable capture for me, because my favourite type of fishing is floater fishing, but it's catching them right off the rod tip when they don't know you're there and it's you against the fish. And to my mind, it's like, it's proper fishing, it's proper hunting fishing. And to achieve that dream with such a special old carp as Turbo, you know, obviously meant a hell of a lot. So now I'm on my second day and I've had two fish, both off the top, one on bread and one on dog biscuit. Absolutely buzzing. And I think I still had one more night, or yeah, 1 or 2 nights left anyway, I can't remember. But then the next morning, I remember I've got up, and this time I was woken up. So that, what I now know is that fish that was feeding on me was happily feeding there, and it was going off resting, and it was feeding through the night into the early morning. And this time, rather than waking up to my alarm at 6:30, 7, I was woken up at just gone sunrise, probably about, I don't know, 5:30, 6, whatever. And again, really twitchy take, ran down and just lifted into it. And as I've lifted into the fish has just kept coming, and I've just watched the fish rise up just like I'd seen it feeding, and it's risen up, and I've just grabbed the net, chucked it out in the water. The fish ain't flinched, it's just gone straight in the net. And as it's going over the net cord, I'm thinking, that's massive, that's a common, and it's not fighting, that's got to be JC. And it's just the most unique carp. And again, a fish that, it's always been one of the Ashmead A team, you know. And I mean, like my hero, like probably a lot of people's hero, to my mind, the greatest carp angler that's ever lived, Terry Earn, you know, he's caught that fish a couple of times, and that always was, you know, it was always like one of the ultimate targets, the long common, single, moon scale, But JC was just like, for its age, it's over 40 years old, it's always been a 40 pounder, and it is just the most immaculate common you could ever wish to see. And to my mind, I'm not just saying it because I love Ashmead, but it's got to be one of the most unique, best looking 40 pound commons in the country. Again, I might be way off there, but it's just my opinion. And yeah, so that was like just the ultimate dream. And I rung Amy, my fiance, and I said, like, you've got to come down like as quick as you can with the kids. Like, this is the ultimate. Like, I've got JC in the net, and yeah, just held it. And it's that unique that, and it was down in weight as well. And I remember it was just like, it was even like a little bit awkward to hold. Like, but yeah, got some amazing photos, some lovely photos with Amy and the kids, and yeah, a very, very, very special moment. Give it an oxygen bath, as I like to do with the old ones, and watched it swim away, and just thought, you know, I might not top that for, well, ever, never mind a long time. So yeah, by now you can imagine it is just by far and above the ultimate session, and yeah, I didn't know that it could get any better from there. But yeah, to my surprise, the session did get better when I've then said my goodbyes to Amy and the kids. They've gone off, and yeah, I've just cooked up a breakfast. I think my other rod was still out, and I just enjoyed just the most magical summer's morning. I think, looking back, I think it was June. And then, yeah, I remember my buzz of going off stalking and hunting. I'd almost relaxed a little bit. I know it sounds bad because I only had 2 or 3 nights, but I'd achieved my dream, and I'd almost relaxed a little bit. So I thought, do you know what? I'm going to go round to the hut, and that's it. I was bringing Capri Suns. So Amy said to me, it's a good idea for you. So it's like ice lollies the whole time. So I'd have my backpack, and then I'd keep a big load of Capri Suns in the freezer, and then by the time you're walking around, they're half like a slush puppy. Family do it when we go down the beach as well. So yeah, I'd always take a couple of them. And I remember I was sat at the hut chomping on this Capri Sun, and then in the little bay over by the hut, I've just seen this big common, which I reckon I'd seen the day before. You know, the one I said that had like a high humped back. Again, a really unique, special Ashmead carp. And it looked so up for a floater, you couldn't have wished for a better scenario. You know, it was just cruising around, sucking at a bit of weed, then it was go to another weed bed, and it was just happy cruising about. And I'm talking that much of its back was up out of the water. So yeah, I started chucking some dog biscuits out, gone and sat back at the hut, and I've just seen some rippling. I thought, surely not, I've just had JC this morning. And then my good friend Nick, one of the bailiffs, he's turned up, so we was having a chat, and I said, mate, that one's feeding, like, I reckon I've got a good chance of catching that. And it was the most unique capture I've ever had. So after chatting for a little while, seeing this fish feeding, Nick said, right, I'm going to go and do a little lap, go and have a little walk. So he's actually come up to here, this little swim, South Goat, and gone up. So he's disappeared over the bridge, coming up this way to South Goat. And then what I've noticed that this fish is doing is where I'm putting the dog biscuits in the weed, it's coming up, it's taking a few, and then it's swimming on. And it's coming up, taking a few. So it's like absolutely game on. Like, I can't not, you know, I say I can't not catch it, but I had to have like a proper good chance at catching this fish. And then what it was doing is it was swimming under the big bridge, going out, not far, and then it would come back under the bridge and then come into the little bay. So in the end, it was quite an open swim, so I had to be careful with not spooking this fish that was very confident acting, very natural. And I didn't want to ruin my chance, so I thought, you know, I'm going to be very, very, very careful and take every precaution, as you should when you're floater fishing. So I've started realising that it's doing this little patrol, so I thought I'm going to chuck some dog biscuits. There was this little clump of weed just off of underneath the bridge. So I've chucked, I think it was like 3, 4, 5 dog biscuits, and they've all landed in the bit of weed, which was perfect. And as I've watched this carp swimming the whole time of its back out of the water, I could just see these golden, like incredible dark scales. Where I'm stood up on the high bank and I could just see the width of it, I knew it was at least a 30. And then as it's coming up to the island, coming under the bridge, I've had to use the bridge as cover, and then as it's gone swimming under the bridge, I've like using it as cover that side. And I've got a really long drop. I've got my dog biscuit there waiting, and as it's come underneath, it's seen the dog biscuit, so I've put it on exactly the same route that it was taking every time, and it's just stopped, come up, and it started taking. Its eyes were out of the water, its back was out of the water. It was just the ultimate moment. And now I'm actually stood on the bridge, and I've got this really long drop, and I've just put it slowly onto its nose as it's feeding in the weed. It's only a little clump of weed, and as it's hoovering up these dog biscuits, and I've just lowered it on a really long drop, and I'm stood on the bridge, and it's just taken it, and I've just gone bang, struck up into midair. So as I've hooked it, it's just gone straight underneath the big bridge, so I'm now holding on, and I'm hanging on, and it is just yanking and yanking and yanking and yanking and going. And with that, Nick's come walking back across from South Goat, the bridge that I'm on, and he's come walking across, and he's like, "You're not in again." And I was like, "Mate, it's that good common. It is that good common. I've just hooked it." And after a mental battle, and then I had to bring it underneath the island, and then by then Dylan had come back round as well, and they've helped me net it. And yeah, I can't remember the weight of it. It was a 30 pound something, and yeah, it was petals. So as I say, that was just like the ultimate session. I was right there by the hut, by the sign. I remember I really wanted to get a picture by the sign, which I got. And yeah, lovely to take in the moment with them boys. And yeah, as I say, that was like my most special, memorable session, without a doubt, in any of my fishing. Those 2 or 3 days, to have those 4 fish was just amazing. And you know, like I said, the year that I'd had, the first time I went fishing, and to have that trip was yeah, proper special. So so yeah, that was that trip. And then a bit more up to date, I didn't do too much this year, obviously setting up the getting the podcast going, and I actually get my carp fishing buzz through doing the interviews and the podcast with all these really interesting anglers that I'm lucky enough to film with, because hearing their excitement and their buzz, I do get my fishing buzz, but there comes a point where you just need to go and do the real thing. So after, well, it would have been 4 months of starting the podcast this year, and I came down in April, lovely spring trip, and I thought, you know, I just need to go fishing. So I come down, done a couple of nights, and yeah, I got lucky. I had one of the older 20 pound mirrors, I'm not sure on the name of that one, and then I had the long common again. After seeing, that's why I set up in that area, I saw 3 commons. One was a bit of a giant, which I believe to be the long common, and yeah, had that first light this time in the spring, and this time a bit heavier. It was 40 pound, and yeah, a similar battle to the first time. I actually remember, well, yeah, it's actually worth pointing out about that capture of the long common for the second time. I wasn't using my head torch. I had it on, but I didn't turn it on. Might have even been a moon, actually. Probably was a full moon. And yeah, playing this fishing, felt a good fish. I wouldn't have said it was you know, 40 pound the long common. I probably wouldn't have said that, but it felt right. And then as I'm like walking back, because you've got like a bit of a grassy bank there, and as I'm like walking back, trying to bring it through the weed, I've then flicked my head torch on to see where my line was going, and I can see my line coming out the rod tip, and it's like facing right down into the reeds. So as I've looked down like that, I've then spooked the fish. I've seen that it's the long common. It was there ready for the net. It was actually too close to the bank. It was up against the reeds ready for the net, but I just didn't realise. Proper good angling, like. So then anyway, it's like woke up a bit, gone a bit crazy again, the weight of it as it's taking line. I've had to give it back line. Yeah, eventually got it in the net, and yeah, recapture, but it doesn't matter when it's such a special fish as that. And yeah, that's basically up to date. I love Ashmead as much as I always have. I have caught quite a lot of the ones that I was after. There's still a few in here that I'd love to catch, and with it being reasonably local, and obviously my busy life with family, work, and now doing the podcast, you know, my main love is my floater fishing, and there really is nowhere like Ashmead. It's weedy, it's shallow, it's broken up, it's like a maze, and yeah, I'll always keep it and just get my fishing fix doing my floater fishing. So yeah, I'll always, as I say, I'll always keep this ticket, and then yeah, for the rest of the year, I've got all of the podcasts that I've been working really hard on, editing them up, and yeah, getting them all ready to be put out. And then for this coming year, I've already been filming quite a few, and I've got loads to go out and film. And yeah, probably the next time I'll be fishing will probably be on a very, very special trip in April, which I can't wait to share with you. So yeah, I've put it off for long enough, and yeah, I thought I may as well come down here and do this film at this very, very special, incredible, unique place. And yeah, if it weren't for Crowy, I probably wouldn't have done it. But I've enjoyed it. Hopefully you've enjoyed me blabbering on about my fishing, in a way to maybe get to know a little bit about me and my fishing. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed, and as always, keep catching them, and I hope you have a great spring, and yeah, I hope you keep enjoying the videos. Thank you very much.